Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. Today, Jason and I are diving into one of the most baffling maritime mysteries in human history, the strange story of the Mary Celeste.
Thanks, Sarah. I have been looking forward to this episode for weeks. The story of the Mary Celeste is the ultimate ghost ship mystery, and even after more than a century, nobody has been able to solve it definitively.
To set the scene for our listeners, let us travel back in time to December 1872. A merchant ship named the Dei Gratia was sailing across the Atlantic Ocean toward Europe when the crew noticed another vessel drifting aimlessly in the distance.
The captain of the Dei Gratia, Captain Morehouse, knew the captain of the Mary Celeste personally. His name was Benjamin Briggs, and he was considered a highly experienced, responsible, and respected sailor.
When the crew of the Dei Gratia approached the Mary Celeste, they noticed that something was terribly wrong. The sails were partially set, but the ship was moving erratically with the ocean currents, as if nobody was steering the wheel.
Captain Morehouse immediately ordered his first mate, Oliver DeVoe, to board the Mary Celeste and investigate the situation. What DeVoe discovered when he stepped onto the deck was completely haunting.
The entire ship was completely deserted. Captain Briggs, his wife Sarah, their 2-year-old daughter Sophia, and all 7 crew members had vanished into thin air without leaving a single trace behind.
What makes this discovery so perplexing is that the ship itself was in remarkably good condition. There were no signs of a violent struggle, no damage from a severe storm, and no evidence of a fire.
Exactly. The ship was fully seaworthy, and its cargo of over 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol was almost completely intact. So the big question remains, why did 10 people abandon a perfectly safe ship in the middle of the ocean?
Let us examine the specific clues that the investigators found on board, Sarah. First, the ship's logbook was discovered inside the captain's cabin.
That logbook provided a crucial timeline. The final entry was written on November 25th, 9 days before the Dei Gratia discovered the vessel drifting near the Azores Islands.
So for 9 days, the Mary Celeste had been sailing on its own across hundreds of miles of open ocean without anyone at the helm. That is truly incredible.
Another interesting detail was the personal belongings left behind. The crew had left all their extra clothes, money, and personal items in their quarters. If they had planned to leave the ship permanently, wouldn't they have taken their valuables with them?
You would certainly think so. Furthermore, there was plenty of fresh food and drinking water left on board, enough provisions to last the crew for 6 months. They were definitely not starving or dying of thirst.
The only significant item missing from the vessel was the single lifeboat. The navigational instruments, including the sextant and detailed charts, were also missing from the captain's desk.
That strongly suggests that Captain Briggs made a conscious decision to order everyone off the ship and into the lifeboat. But what could possibly terrify an experienced captain so much that he would evacuate his family into a tiny boat in the open ocean?
That is the core puzzle of this entire investigation. Whatever happened must have occurred very suddenly, forcing them to react instantly out of panic.
Over the years, historians and researchers have proposed dozens of different theories. Let us discuss the most popular ones, starting with a pirate attack or a crew mutiny.
In the 19th century, pirates were still active in certain parts of the Atlantic Ocean, so many people initially assumed that pirates had attacked the Mary Celeste, murdered everyone, and thrown their bodies into the sea.
But if pirates had attacked the vessel, wouldn't they have stolen the valuable cargo or the crew's personal money and possessions? Nothing of value was stolen from the cabins.
That is why the pirate theory was quickly dismissed by maritime investigators. Pirates would never leave 1,700 barrels of valuable industrial alcohol behind without touching them.
What about the mutiny theory, then? Is it possible that the 7 crew members rebelled against Captain Briggs, killed him and his family, and then escaped in the lifeboat?
That theory was thoroughly investigated during the court hearings in Gibraltar, but again, the physical evidence contradicted it. Captain Briggs was known as a fair and kind leader who paid his crew well and treated them with respect.
Besides, there were no signs of violence anywhere on the ship. The inspector found no bloodstains, no weapon marks on the wooden walls, and no disarray in the living quarters. Everything was tidy and organized.
It seems highly unlikely that a violent mutiny could occur without leaving a single mark or scratch on the wooden deck. So, mutiny seems just as improbable as a pirate attack.
Now, Sarah, we cannot discuss the Mary Celeste without mentioning some of the wild, supernatural theories that became popular in popular culture.
Ah, yes. 19th century newspapers loved publishing sensational stories to sell more copies. One popular myth claimed that a giant sea monster, like a kraken or a giant squid, pulled everyone off the deck one by one.
While a giant squid attack sounds exciting in a fantasy movie, it makes very little practical sense. A giant squid would certainly cause massive structural damage to the ship's railings and rigging, yet the Mary Celeste was completely undamaged.
Another famous fictional story was actually written by Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the creator of Sherlock Holmes. He published a short story based on the Mary Celeste, but he changed the ship's name slightly to the Marie Celeste.
In his fictional story, a vengeful passenger murdered everyone on board. Many readers mistakenly believed that Conan Doyle's fictional story was a real news report, which created even more confusion around the true facts of the case.
That story helped transform a tragic real-life disappearance into an immortal urban legend. But if we strip away the myths, sea monsters, and fictional stories, we still need a realistic, scientific explanation for why the crew vanished.
That brings us to what many modern scientists and maritime historians consider the most plausible scientific theory: the industrial alcohol hazard.
This theory is fascinating because it focuses on the chemical nature of the cargo. As we mentioned earlier, the Mary Celeste was transporting 1,700 barrels of industrial alcohol from New York to Genoa, Italy.
9 of those barrels were made of red oak wood, while the rest were made of white oak. Red oak is much more porous than white oak, meaning it allows chemical vapors to leak out much more easily.
During the long voyage, as the ship sailed into warmer waters, the liquid alcohol inside those 9 porous barrels began to evaporate, filling the sealed cargo hold with dangerous, highly flammable fumes.
Imagine being Captain Briggs on a warm November afternoon. Suddenly, a small spark or thermal expansion causes a dramatic rumble or a harmless vapor explosion inside the dark cargo hold.
The captain hears a loud explosion sound, sees smoke rising through the hatch, and naturally fears that the entire ship is about to explode in a massive fireball.
In a moment of pure panic, Captain Briggs orders everyone to evacuate immediately into the small towing lifeboat attached to the stern of the ship.
He does not intend to abandon the Mary Celeste permanently. He simply wants his family and crew to wait at a safe distance in the small boat until the danger of explosion passes.
This alcohol explosion theory actually explains almost every piece of physical evidence found by the investigators.
It really does. To stay connected to the main ship while waiting for the fumes to clear, the crew would have used a long rope, known as a tow line, to tie their small lifeboat to the stern of the Mary Celeste.
But then, a sudden tragedy must have struck. While they were floating behind the main ship, a severe weather change or a sudden squall hit the ocean.
As the wind caught the sails of the heavy Mary Celeste, the large ship suddenly surged forward at high speed. The sudden tension on the tow line was too great, and the rope snapped.
Or perhaps, in the confusion and panic, the knot securing the tow line simply slipped loose. Once the rope broke, the heavy Mary Celeste pulled away rapidly, leaving 10 helpless people stranded in a tiny wooden lifeboat in the middle of a rough ocean.
A small, overcrowded lifeboat would stand very little chance of survival in heavy ocean swells far from land. Eventually, the small boat would capsize, and everyone on board would drown without leaving any trace for searchers to find.
That scenario is heartbreaking, but it provides a completely logical, realistic, and scientifically sound explanation for every single mystery surrounding the ship.
There is also a secondary modern theory regarding water inside the ship's hold, and a broken measuring rod that might have contributed to the captain's fatal decision.
Oh, tell us about that, Sarah. How does the water measuring rod fit into the puzzle?
Well, during modern examinations of the vessel's records, researchers noticed that the Mary Celeste had recently been renovated, and her previous cargo had been grain, which leaves a lot of wooden dust inside the lower hull.
When seawater naturally seeped into the bottom of the ship, which was totally normal for wooden ships of that era, that grain dust likely clogged the bilge pumps.
Exactly. When Captain Briggs ordered a crew member to measure how much water was inside the bottom hold using a sounding rod, The clogged pumps caused the rod to give a completely false reading.
The captain might have looked at the faulty sounding rod and mistakenly believed that the ship was taking on water at a catastrophic rate and sinking fast.
So, whether it was the fear of an alcohol explosion or the false belief that the ship was sinking due to clogged pumps, Captain Briggs was acting out of an urgent desire to protect his family and crew.
It shows that even the most experienced, cautious captains can make tragic misjudgments when operating under extreme stress and incomplete information.
What happened to the Mary Celeste after she was brought to port by the crew of the Dei Gratia, Jason? Did people refuse to sail on her after the tragedy?
Unsurprisingly, the Mary Celeste gained a terrible reputation as a cursed vessel. Sailors are notoriously superstitious, and very few crew members were willing to step foot on a ghost ship.
Over the next 12 years, the ship was sold to various different owners at very low prices, but bad luck seemed to follow it wherever it sailed. It suffered frequent financial losses and accidental collisions.
Finally, in 1885, a ruthless new owner tried to commit insurance fraud by deliberately crashing the Mary Celeste into a coral reef off the coast of Haiti.
He wrecked the ship on purpose, hoping to collect a large insurance payout, but the wooden hull refused to sink completely. The fraud was discovered, the owner was prosecuted, and the wrecked remains of the Mary Celeste were left to decay naturally under the tropical ocean waves.
What a tragic and sad ending for a vessel that achieved such immense global fame. Today, nothing remains of the original ship except its immortal mystery.
This historical mystery is not only fascinating to study, but it also gives English learners a fantastic opportunity to practice deductive language and past tenses.
Absolutely. Throughout our discussion, we used phrases like must have been, could have happened, and might have caused. These modal verbs of deduction are essential when you want to analyze past events without complete certainty.
We also used passive voice structures, such as the ship was discovered, the cargo was left intact, and the theories were thoroughly investigated. Passive voice is very useful when telling historical stories where the action is more important than who performed it.
Learning English through real historical mysteries like the Mary Celeste makes vocabulary acquisition feel completely natural and enjoyable rather than boring.
I couldn't agree more, Jason. When you focus on a compelling story, you absorb words like seaworthy, evacuate, abandon, and investigate effortlessly within their proper context.
As we wrap up today's episode, Sarah, what is your final verdict on the Mary Celeste? Do you think we will ever know the absolute truth with 100% certainty?
Unless someone discovers a hidden bottle containing a message from Captain Briggs at the bottom of the Atlantic Ocean, we will probably never know the exact details. But that enduring uncertainty is precisely why the story remains so captivating after 150 years.
The mystery leaves room for our imagination while teaching us valuable lessons about maritime history, human psychology, and scientific reasoning.
Thank you so much for joining me for this historical deep dive today, Jason.
It was my absolute pleasure, Sarah. And to all our Vocedia listeners, thank you for tuning in to practice your English with us today.
Don't forget to review the vocabulary from this episode. Keep practicing your listening skills and stay curious about the world's great mysteries.
Take care, everyone. Have a wonderful week ahead, and goodbye for now.
Goodbye, everyone. See you in the next episode.